Hi everyone, and welcome to Module 2. And this module is going to cover Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 of Ginter's textbook. And so there's a lot of material to cover, but really important material. And as you look through the module online, you'll see that the heading is Analyzing the General and the Healthcare Environment. And so we're really going to focus on two areas. The first area is going to be focusing on the external environment within the healthcare ecosystem and the other impactful areas within the environment. And then we're going to look at something that's called the competitor analysis of the service area. And so we'll focus on those two big areas in the upcoming module with different content that'll help you to get an understanding of what that's all about. So for Chapter 2, there's, again, a number of learning objectives, but I really want you to focus on a couple of them. And they're highlighted in the introduction, and the objectives list are also in the PowerPoint slides. But I really want you to come away from the module understanding why an external analysis is important, because that's what Chapter 2 is all about. It's about the external analysis of the environment, and then be able to apply and articulate some of the goals of doing an external analysis. Those are critical. That's a critical step. So be able to talk about what's the goal of an external analysis. So kind of why are you doing it? What are you trying to achieve? And then I want you to understand what are the techniques and tools that are used to identify and assess external issues, trends in the environment, things that are happening. And so really focusing on what an external analysis is, why it's really important, and basically how do you do one. And you will see that there's a tremendous connectivity to the work that you do every day in your job. So the text has a quote by Peter Drucker, which I think is really important, and it's bigger than even just strategy and management, but really it's a quote for leaders, and it says one of the most important tasks of an organizational leader is to anticipate risk and crisis, and perhaps not to avoid it, but to anticipate it. And so the role, as far as I'm concerned, of a leader, is I'm right there with Drucker, is to really understand and predict and analyze when a crisis is coming, and what can the leader do to really monitor and manage the organization, direct and create initiatives and strategies around crisis management. And not only crises that are sudden and occur quickly, but also things that happen slowly, where the market migrates over time. And so the role of the leader is to really help to move the organization through a storm, whether it's a small storm, a medium storm, or a hurricane. And so keep that in mind as you're reading materials. And Peter Drucker is a guru of management, someone that you want to be familiar with, and who you want to read when you have time, when you're not focusing on studying textbooks, etc. So the chapter, the focus again, chapter focus is on the external analysis. And if you remember, when we're talking about strategic management, and there's the three verticals, there's the strategic thinking process, there's the strategic planning process, and there's the strategic momentum process. And so the external analysis falls under the strategic planning process. And so we'll talk about the strategic planning of those three sort of domains in this module. And again, external analysis is critical. It's a part of strategic planning, and it falls under the situational analysis versus the strategy formation or the implementation planning. And so we're gonna look at the components of an external analysis. In terms of the steps for an external analysis to conduct it, there's 6 of them, and we'll look at those in the readings and also in the slides that are provided. And think about when you look at the organization that you're in. Ginter has an analogy in his model around, in addition to the steps of the external analysis. Also, he looks at something he calls the nest of the environment, how the organization is central inside of that nest. And so you want to make sure that you're following the steps of your external analysis, so that you can understand all the different variables that the organization sits within their environment. And so the steps are outlined in the book. I'm not going to go through all of those here. You can read those steps, pretty self-explanatory. But I think that the concept around the nest is very important because that's really what you're looking at when you conduct your external assessment. You're looking at the general environment, the government, business, organizations that are in the environment, manufacturing firms, other countries, and organizations within those countries. You're going to want to look at healthcare and things around planning and policy and regulatory components and how those are impacting the environment that the organization is nested within. And so you have general environment components and stakeholders, and then you also have the healthcare environment. Not only what's happening from a government perspective, what providers are doing, how reimbursement's being mandated, how it's changing, new models that are appearing. And then you're going to want to make sure that you're focusing on your service area and what is happening within that service area. Primarily from a competitor perspective, we'll look at that today as we talk about our service area competitive analysis in Chapter 3, but also what's happening within your local governments, your state governments, federal governments that are going to have an impact on the external market that you're in. You're going to want to look at things like not-for-profit organizations and see what is happening in that space. And so the general environment, the healthcare environment, your service area, those are all environments that focus and impact the organization that's nested inside of that larger ecosystem. In terms of goals for the environment analysis, there's a number of those. And really the goals of an environmental analysis is really to identify and focus on the issues and changes that are occurring in the external environment that will affect the organization. You want to analyze and look for signals of emerging issues or changes that can affect the organization. You want to speculate on what those future issues and changes may do to the organization that you're in. What kind of impact will they have? You're going to want to use the information that you gather through your external environment analysis and be able to bring that inside the organization and help to develop your mission, your vision, your goals, your values, your strategies that you have based on that information. And also by doing it in a structured way, by following the steps that have been identified to do an effective external analysis. You're going to be thinking strategically. You're going to build that whole cultural environment of being strategic thinkers within your organization. In terms of the steps for the external analysis, the focus is really on first creating an issue map. And there's an excellent slide in the text and a lot of content there that explains the issues that you want to consider when you lay out your issue map. What are the areas that you want to focus on? The second thing you want to do is you want to look out into the environment, into the external environment. You almost look out the window at the environment and see what it is that's happening out in that environment. You want to look at the data that you can obtain and interpret that data and sort of assess the environmental changes and almost forecast for where you think those changes are going to take the organization or take the marketplace. Oftentimes this is work that you do that's not science-based because it's always a best guess because we don't know the future. But you really want to look at the environment, you want to assess the data, and then you want to forecast what the changes are and how your future might be impacted as an organization. And then what's the likelihood that something that you're seeing in the marketplace is going to continue? Is it going to be a one and done, or is it going to have a long-term impact? And so that's another component that you want to be thinking about in terms of the steps to conduct your external analysis. There are a number of tools that are available for us to do as we conduct our environmental or external analysis. You know, you're probably most familiar with the brainstorming tools, the focus group tools that are outlined. There's others that are there. Make sure you familiarize yourself with those 8 tools. Those are a written assignment based on the tools that you want to complete, and will help you to sort of synthesize the learning around those tools And so you want to make sure to study those and also the terms that are listed at the end of the chapter. I think it's really important for each chapter to really understand the definitions that are provided as you move around in your day-to-day work. You hear those terms, you'll be familiar with them, and that'll help you to provide input into the conversations and also have understanding of where things are going directionally. The second chapter that we're talking about today is chapter 3. And chapter 3 is focusing on competitor analysis. And so looking at the service area that you're actually working in. So chapter 2 is looking at that entire, the general environment, the healthcare environment, the regulatory environment, to see how those factors are impacting the marketplace. And now you want to focus specifically on the competition. And it's important that as an organization, you're always looking at the competition. At HCSC, when I was working in the organization, we began to see a trend around something called health advocacy. And so a lot of the large plans were beginning to lose business to small niche players who were setting up organizations and competitors that could actually help employees navigate the complexities of the healthcare system with the health advocate. And so we began to see some of our large customers beginning to purchase these one-off services from these niche competitors under this health advocacy umbrella. And so as we did the market analysis and we did the service area competitive analysis, we began to see that these organizations we're going to need to have a solution within our organization to counteract the market share that these small niche players were beginning to take away from us. And so a service area competitor analysis is absolutely critical, and it's a part of the external analysis. So keep that in mind also. In the learning objectives, there are 2 in this chapter, which I think are absolutely critical for you. You really want to make sure you understand the importance of doing a service area analysis, why you do that, and then look at the process and describe how it actually is conducted. The focus for a service area analysis, kind of the why of it. Why is it important? So there are a number of benefits to conducting the analysis. First of all, you avoid surprises. So you're scanning your environment, you're looking at the competitors within your service area, within your market, you're understanding what's happening out there. This is very, very valuable information. It helps the organization to be informed about what's going on, what their own strengths and weaknesses are as an organization. It helps the organization also to learn, what's the competition doing? What should we be doing? What are we not doing? It helps leaders get aligned. Oftentimes leaders in organizations all have their own view of where a company should be moving. And by looking at the competitors within your service area, it will help to bring those leaders together to say, these are the 3 or 4 things we should be focusing on. This is what the competition is focusing on, and this is why this is important. The other benefit of performing a competitor analysis is that it influences your strategy. It helps you define where do we want to take the organization. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it very much influences the organizational strategy. As with the external analysis, there's also a service area competitor steps to completing the analysis. Really focus on looking at those steps, and they're outlined nicely in the book and in the slides. And you want to focus on step 2, which is really an important component, which is conduct a service area structural analysis. And Porter, another guru in management, identifies 5 points that are important in conducting the analysis. And you want to look at those different points because they're really, really helpful. It's important to understand, why is the threat of new entrants into a market important? Why is the level of rivalry among existing stakeholders within a marketplace important? Is there a risk for substitute products and services to come into the market? New products and services. Think about when people got off beef and moved on to chicken, or the difference between Pandora and Spotify, or even the difference between Aetna and Blue Cross Blue Shield. Are there substitutes for things that are being done today? And then there's a component around two areas of who really has power. And you see the customer's power in terms of buying services and the ability for them to go wherever the products are the cheapest. And then the other piece around power is the suppliers. And a lot of time folks don't think about the power of a supplier to an organization. But oftentimes suppliers set prices that it will cost the organization to do business. And so that can definitely have an impact on the price. And so those five forces: entrance in the marketplace, rivalry among existing organizations. Are there substitute products in the marketplace? What's the position of, from a price perspective, of buyers? Do they have bargaining power? And then what's the bargaining power of suppliers? Is one supplier the sole supplier of a particular service that an organization needs? And when you look at these two forces, these two components or these five focuses from two different components, if all those forces are positive, you're going to have a favorable environment. And when you do your structural analysis, if those five forces outlined by Porter are unstable or confrontational, you're going to have an unstable environment. So that's an overview of the Module 2. And so hopefully these comments are helpful for you. And I want to make sure that you are reminded about the discussion question and the written assignment that's in the module. Again, complete all of the requirements within the module. I think it'll give you a good understanding of this topic of the external environment and then the service area competitive analysis. In our next module, we'll be focusing on internal analysis. So we'll move from studying the external environment, studying the competitive landscape, and moving into looking at the organization's internal strengths and weaknesses. And it's really hard for us as organizational leaders to do that because we often don't see our weaknesses. We focus on our strengths, particularly if we've got competitive advantage. It's easy to get blinded by some of the things that we're not good at. And they always say that the worst place to be is number one because there's always somebody in slot number two trying to take your spot. And so hopefully we'll get some insight into the internal analysis, the importance of it, of how to look at an organization objectively. And we'll look forward to seeing you in Module 3.